I'm a demon and my job is to help human beings. I am a demon, and a very unusual one at that. You see, I was once a human being, just like you. I scammed people, cheated on my girlfriends after gaslighting them and preying on their insecurities, shamed victims of abuse and assault, and on the whole took great pride in being an asshole of the highest order. So the powers that be decided to punish me by not letting me move on. I must exist as a demon, condemned to wander the earth. The only way my condemnation will end is if I help at least 1,000 human beings. You may think that being able to live forever as a free spirit, traveling the world may be a blast, especially for a guy like me. But you're wrong. I can go wherever I want, but I can hardly experience any worldly pleasures. I can't taste food. I can't feel the touch of a warm body or a cool breeze on a hot summer day. I can hear music, but the sound is distorted and painful to listen to. Even the colors I see are dull and muted. It's a pretty torturous existence. I can experience taste, touch, etc. only when I take the form of other beings, humans or animals. But I can only do so in order to help someone. So, I must now go around looking for troubled individuals. That's not very hard to do. Pain and sadness are readily available in this world. The first person I helped was Jared. I first saw him when I was just hanging out on a tree next to a house. The house that he lived in. He was a good guy, polite, hardworking, honest, kind and compassionate. If I'd been half the man he is, I would have never ended up in this mess. But that is beside the point. I came into Jared's life because of his dog. Jared had adopted a mongrel from a local shelter and named his Hector. The dog was well behaved, housebroken, etc., but got really nervous and antsy when he heard loud noises, especially that of a fire truck or an ambulance. He would try to hide under the bed, or behind the couch. On one occasion, I saw Hector seek refuge by cowering behind Jared when an ambulance passed by during his walk. But I could see that with Jared's love and care he was slowly getting over his fear. Then one day, Jared had to go out of town to tend to a family emergency. Normally he would leave Hector with a dog sitter, but he just couldn't get one on such short notice. So he asked his friend, Chris, to watch Hector. Jared left in the early afternoon and told Chris he would be back the next evening. After giving Chris some instructions regarding Hector's care, and giving Hector a loving head pat and telling him to be a good boy, he was on his way. Chris fed Hector in accordance with Jared's instructions, but was very careless when walking him. Jared had told him about Hector's fear of sirens and had asked him to be vigilant. But this idiot would have his face buried in his phone. I flew overhead and saw him browse Tinder and swiping on any photo that wasn't completely flat-chested. Fucking Chad. That evening while walking the dog, he was still hunting for a potential booty call when I heard an ambulance in the distance. Hector began to whimper. He began to pull on the leash, but Chris just told him to calm down. Then it happened. The ambulance got closer, and as Jared wasn't here to comfort him, Hector panicked and with a tug, he released the leash from Chris's careless grip and ran off. Chris, being the moron that he was, instead of getting in his car and going after him, just stood there and called out to the dog. I tried to fly after him as quickly as I could, but Hector was too fast. He had disappeared into the woods. I looked for him for what seemed like an hour, but couldn't find him anywhere. I returned to the tree outside the house and had a serious urge to give Chris a beating he'll never forget. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to hurt anyone. I heard him talk to Jared on the phone. He had the gall to defend himself and blamed Jared for not training his dog properly. The thing is that in my human form, I would have been Chris. I would have hurt those around me with my selfishness and arrogance and would have blamed them for their pain. I decided to keep looking for Hector until Jared returned. I flew over the woods and the city that lay beyond, but there was no sign of Hector. Jared began his search for Hector as soon as he returned. His friends, the non-asshole friends, joined in. They put up missing dog posters, used social media, asked around, but even 3 days later, Hector could not be found. Jared told Chris he never wanted to see him again. I admired his restraint when he managed not to punch Chris's face in. But Jared was heartbroken. He loved that dog and now blamed himself for leaving him with a selfish idiot. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I took the form of Hector the dog. The next morning, When Jared came out to get the newspaper, he saw his dog walking down the street towards the house. To say that the guy was elated would be an understatement. He ran to his buddy and put his arms around him, and I felt a warm embrace for the first time in years. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I never realized just how much I had missed being held. Then I remembered that I was a dog and needed to act like one. So I did what dogs reunited with their humans do and licked the guy's face. He took me indoor and I got to taste bacon and eggs after such a long time. I gobbled it all up. Jared worked mostly from home, and as he sat on the couch with his laptop, after calling all his friends and telling them that his dog was back, I sat on the couch beside him. The big, comfy couch felt so good. I was so comfortable I fell asleep, with Jared occasionally caressing my head. I woke up in the late afternoon and it was time to go to the dog park. I had a blast at the park. Dogging was so much fun. I ran around like a loon, fetched a ball for Jared until his arm got tired, rolled around on the soft grass. Sniffing that other dog's butt wasn't as much fun, but I had to keep up appearances. We came back home an hour later and I was treated to more delicious food, and the icing on the cake was Jared scratching my ears and telling me I was a good boy. I couldn't remember the last time I had experienced such affection, the last time I had felt so cared for. The days went by happily and Jared continued to be a great dog parent. We'd play at the park. I'd sit next to him as he worked and would paw at his arm when I wanted pets. At night when he was asleep I would take my original form and would fly around looking for Hector. A part of me wished he wouldn't be found, but I couldn't be selfish. I couldn't be Jared's dog forever. I had to help him and move on. Then one day, as I flew over the city, I saw Hector's face on a poster, a found dog poster. It was Hector without a doubt. I memorized the contact information and flew home. As I waited for the morning, I was torn between joy and grief. Joy over having helped the first of 1,000 people who would free me from my condemnation, and grief over the impending loss of my friend. In the afternoon, when Jared went out to run some errands, I flew out the window. I took Jared's form as I approached the home of the family that had found Hector. After giving them a detailed description of the dog, and producing his adoption and veterinary records, they let me take him. Hector seemed to recognize his human, but did act like he sensed something was amiss. I quickly took him home and disappeared just before Jared walked in through the door. That night as I looked in through the window, I saw Jared playing with his dog, a pure, unadulterated display of love that made my heart ache, a feeling I had never experienced as a human being, on account of never letting another heart touch mine. But this guy and his dog made me more human than I had ever been in the flesh. I looked at Jared for the last time as I silently thanked him for those few wonderful days of companionship. It was now time for me to go.